Good morning. So, later today, I think I will actually return to science because um, first I really need to conduct microscopic examinations of my various containers, just for documentation purposes and just to see that everything is, I mean, at least as much as as I left it. I mean, not worse. It's not healthy to leave the containers too much time without just sampling. In the past, I've had several mistakes and that were not discovered in time, and it wasn't critical, but it created some deterioration. Of the various. It's ecosystems. So it's smart to sample the ecosystems for us from time to time. Mostly it's ecosystem that are used. The primary purpose is to multiply and grow the neurons, of course, but in several different mediums and with several slightly different objectives. Specifically, I would just remind you, if you're new to the channel, it's different because there's slightly different between do you want life forms to also be created, multiplied with the neurons, and what kind of life forms? Because these are almost all what you call alien life forms, which means not microbes that are, or even larger than microbes, animals that are known to Earth science. Even though you don't. First you don't know a guy, and then you know him, so you know him, and then he's not know. He becomes a known guy. So that's why I say quote unquote alien life form, because what's an alien life form? Am I an alien life form? I don't know. From my perspective, I'm not an alien at all. I was born here, and I feel that this is my place more than it's yours, actually. So, from my perspective, you're the aliens, and the Earth is mine. So, just to say, but I would say life forms that are not known in your books, and there's kind of all sorts of variations, and there was also a variation of what kind of material media, what's the basic stuff, specifically with regards to how oily you want it versus more watery, and if it's water, should it be based more of pea or salt water? There are also variation, and if it's more in the oil realm, there is still there's more liquid oils, and there is hard oils like beeswax specifically that is very good for some applications, and also good it's also very good just in general as a preservatives for the neurons. They don't need liquid veneers in order to live and multiply and grow. Actually, they do it fine inside hard oil, hard beeswax, for example, and even very hard, hard linseed oil, and even hardened acrylic. As to say, they are perfectly fine inside solid environment. To live inside solid environments. And as I mentioned in the past, one of the major differences actually between between a titan and what I call a hybrid, which means Homo sapiens that ate a lot of the drug of the tea. Just to say that many Homo sapienses in Israel since 100 years ago and until now, and this includes the warriors, the female, the caracals, in Venus, and other satanic creatures like that. They actually have more tea in their body than female Venusians that are under the exploitation, because they have sources of the tea, and the Homo sapiens says that they eat a lot of it, and they don't even need to eat it. They can they can consume it remotely, because the portals can pass through the portals. while the Venusians are deprived of their, of their immune system, and I mean they're left like without. It's like to leave a person without white blood cells. Nevertheless, the comparison is actually more complicated than that because, and I've reminded it in the past. What actually happens is that when Homo sapiens are eating the drug, they might like consume great quantities of it, and they might consume even abnormally large ones, like I've done so about a month ago. It's documented that I've eaten in the course of several days several sandwiches with it was the first time that I've done it, and actually didn't continue to do it for all sorts of reasons. But I mean, just to say, I mean, throughout my experimentation during this year, I haven't eaten I've not consumed none of the Neros that I actually created in the laboratory settings. Just I didn't feel the need to do it. I mean, but I mean, about a month ago, I thought, okay, maybe let's experiment with that as well. So I mean, as it was in the course of like 4 or 5 days, I've eaten several sandwiches with quite a bit of paste from one of the jars, and I estimate. I mean, I don't know how many Neros. I mean, wherever you are accustomed to consume, and I guess it's changed. It is varied greatly between people and how rich they are, and what time they lived in, because my estimation is that as time progresses, there is less and less tea because there is less supply and more demand. Like more people are aware of it and there is less supply. So I mean, but my estimation is that probably over this course of 4 or 5 days, they're eating equivalent of maybe I don't know, many thousands of people in the Israeli intelligence are eating throughout the years. but I mean. And it's also, they were huge because they were, created in laboratory. But I mean, and I remember that many people, many watchers of the channel, thought that I'm going to die every moment. Or lose my mind or reset or whatever. They were certain that he's dead, that this person is dead, they're completely dead. But I mean, no, I didn't die. I should mention. I don't know if I mentioned it during the time that that when I've eaten a real substantial amount, several spoons from the jar, from the crucible, then actually for an hour or 2 or 3 or something like that, I actually felt after that I felt generally I felt pretty good during those days. It was nothing bad. I just not in a high or something, but I felt pretty good. But when I've eaten a very big amount, I felt that a contamination, which is probably what happened, because this jar also contained tremendous amount of life forms, and of the demonic type, what I call, which means the life forms that can sustain the heat of the crucible, or in simple words, germs that are resistant to fire. So, and I've eaten probably billions of them, with the Neros. So, and maybe even my immune system is stressing even that so I felt the feeling that you feel when your body is under attack of a billion germs that are resistant to fire. I don't know if you can imagine the feeling, but something like that. It's walking on the streets of Tel Aviv, something like that. So, but after that, it was fine. But I didn't continue with this. I remind you of that because this is, in essence, it's something that happens when Homo sapiens are eating the drug, the tea, because their body is flooded with. It's not really. So the issue is, what does it mean? Their body. Superficially, you can say that their body is flooded with the nano robots, micro robots, but in reality, it's not really equivalent to the biology of Titans, because mainly their blood is flooded with the microbots, and also the organs that are fed by the blood. which means all the, I mean, you know, the internal organs and the digestive system. But microbes, I mean, but unlike microbes, these robots, they, and I mean, it's easily can be like mistakenly to think that like microbes, they require some kind of a liquid medium in order to survive. But this is completely untrue. It was demonstrated that they actually live and work, like do all sorts of like amazing stuff inside hardened MS polymer, like I mean modified silicon polymer, which means that and germs cannot do it. And arguably, I mean, it was even demonstrated that they can do it inside metal, but I mean, I'm sure they can do it inside metal, but it's very difficult for me to actually prove it to you, because I mean, with hardened silicon, I mean, I can and I did like slice it, like I mean, with a sharp knife, and then you get a very hard piece that is the translucent, so you can put it on a slide on backlight microscope, like the one that I had, simple microscope. So you can actually see that, I mean, all sorts of amazing things that are done inside the microscope, and you can actually see the neurons. I mean, inside the silicon, the hard silicon. But with metal, it's much more, I mean, it's difficult to prove it, but I mean, I'm certain they can do it inside metal as well. And certainly they do it inside bones, whatever the bones are made of. Like, I'm certain my bones are not really identical to your bones. But I mean, yes, I have bones, and titans have bones, and I mean, I'm certain that the bones themselves are filled with that. But this is not true for people that just eat the drug. And not only the bones, but also the fat. And the fat is actually the preferred medium for neurons to like, I mean, to stay in. Like, I mean, they're like motors. Like, I mean, there are gears. Like, I mean, that if you want to store it, like, I mean, for not necessarily in order for them to work, but in order for them to be stored. Like gear, like motors that are kept in oil, or like weapons, you know, that are kept in oil. Like, I mean, by default. Like, I mean, when they actually work, I mean, it depends on what kind of work you wanted them to be part of. Because, I mean, for example, for electrolysis purposes, I mean, oil is not recommended, because generally it's I mean, substantially increases resistance, and mostly for electrolysis and for any other electrical application, you want to be able to use the superconductivity characteristics of the neuro, which is something that I spoke about a lot in the past, but not much lately, because lately I've kind of stopped with the electrical experiments and moved more to both, like, I mean, the ecosystem pathway, but also to the crucible experiments that are also very interesting. Like, I mean, that are where fire energy or heat energy is used to, and also mechanical energy is used to energize the neurons instead of electrical energy. But I mean, for a long time it was essential. I mean, a major topic in this blog, like electrolysis specifically. Even though, of course, it's not like the trivial choice, because it's a very cumbersome process. But I speak about it a lot, and I don't want to repeat myself. So I mean, for that purpose, for example, I mean, of course, like saltwater, I mean, based mediums are more, I mean, as a base are better. I mean, generally, like for electrolysis, but they are not stored well in water. Like based, like just H2O, it's not a good like, I mean, medium to store the neurons, not at all. Like it's much better to store them in fatty, like, I mean, mediums. Again, like motors or like weapons, like guns or motors. So I mean, so they are abundant in the fat layers of, I mean, of the person, like of the titan or cherub, and also the bones. And this is not true for humans that just eat it, because then, I mean, it's mostly in their blood and in their organs. So that's one of the reasons why, I mean, a hybrid is not really a titan, even though he or she might demonstrate exactly the behaviors of titans, specifically the ability to operate a bicycle mechanism and to use things that might be considered psychic abilities from like Homo sapiens point of view. And this was known 100 years ago. I mean, because it's very easy to actually witness it, because again, as I remind you, Homo sapiens has also had like these like robots in their body as well, in their very like distant past. So these robots are, I mean, it's evident, I mean, that they are designed for humans as well. I mean, this was known by the first people that actually ate the drug, that, I mean, that they eat something that, I mean, is either completely magical, like in a way that is unexplainable, or that was designed for humans or also for humans. I mean, because otherwise, I mean, any person in his right mind couldn't understand how it affects humans so quickly and so, like, I mean, seamlessly. I mean, as I mentioned in the past, many drugs that are widely used, like in Earth, like for a long time, and still widely used, like, I mean, the antidepressant, like SSRIs, tricyclics, and all sorts of like steroids that are widely used, I mean, for medical purposes. They don't work, I mean, immediately. It takes months to get accustomed to them, and sometimes you don't, and you need to switch to others, and it doesn't work immediately, and I mean, it's like, I mean, it's almost like I say, yeah, miraculous or magical. I mean, that's something that is alien, and a drug that is of alien nature with, I mean, almost immediately, I mean, not immediately, but almost immediately, I mean, will produce, like, I mean, the desired effects on the body of humans. This is because it's not true even for like medical drugs that are used in Earth and that were engineered throughout like a process of many decades and all over the world, and they still require this, I mean, kind of like, I mean, so much time to get accustomed to, and it's not always like true. So this is like I mean, undeniable proof that these robots are, I mean, to some extent were designed for humans as well, because they were part of the human body in the past. So yes, I mean, it's very easy to demonstrate the special behaviors of titans when you eat this drug. And again, this was known, I mean, at least 100 years ago, including things that are thought to belong to, I mean, generally to the spiritual or supernatural realm, but of course they are not spiritual nor supernatural. It's a mechanism, it's a biological mechanism that almost all what we see as supernatural or magical phenomenon that relates to the tea, to the drug, to the neurons, almost all of it is predicated on the bicycle mechanism, which means the ability of the neurons to share, first of all, their shared consciousness and their ability to work in tandem, like in a bicycle, that one like a gear is moving, then the next, and the other one, which is not, I mean, they it's not like adjacent to it, but like they are, I mean, they are connected with a chain, but I mean, like invisible chain, and this chain is like, I mean, at least in the length of the, like, I mean, the chain can stretch, I mean, at least, I mean, as far as, I mean, in the scale of the solar system. Like the entire solar system is like a minimal, like, I mean, minimal maximum length that, I mean, conceivable for this chain. And there are, or like, I mean, infinite amount of these chains, because each one is potentially linked with any other one. This is, of course, that phenomenon in itself is, of course, not something that physics that are known to humans can explain. This is completely outside the realm of known physics, the physics that are known to human. Like, I mean, I don't even claim to even like start to ever, like, I mean, propose any kind of, like, I mean, explanation. Surely, I mean, to understand it would require at least one, if not many, scientific revolutions, because nothing that is known to human, I mean, can even start to explain it. It's for certain it requires different understanding of the cosmos and completely different understanding of particle physics. Completely different understanding. But once you take this phenomenon as a fact, because there are so many, like, there's a mountain of like evidence. I mean, that this is. I mean, that it's true that yes, they can do it. That they can communicate with each other, like I mean, even like through. I mean, tremendous length, like distances, and they can do it. Like I mean, with each one can do it with all of the others. Like I mean, in like, and there are countless like of them, like billions of billions of billions of billions, and they all part of can communicate with each other. So once you understand it, like you take it as a fact, you incorporated this fact into your like worldview, even if you cannot explain it. I mean, how it is consistent with every other thing that you know, but the cosmos, because every other thing is predicated upon like I mean, like I mean, layers of science, like engineering and physics and theoretical physics, and this is like I mean, it doesn't fit like to the whole picture. But if you just I mean incorporate it to the picture, even like as like a secluded like I mean fact, but as a given fact, then after that it's not a problem to understand why I mean the Titans and also the hybrids, which are just Homo sapienses, demonstrate this kind of like supernatural behaviors or psychic behaviors, and you can also understand I mean how the symbolic language I mean how things like these paintings like can actually affect reality, even though I mean on a surface level it looks like voodoo, just like voodoo, but you understand like how this voodoo is actually I mean can be like I mean placed like I mean can be understood as part of scientific worldview, not like as something that is outside the realm of science, but it is strictly inside the realm of science. Just it's not exactly the science that is known to human now, but it's science that I mean takes into account the bicycle mechanism. Now, what I would want to do is to conduct something that experiments that are quite ambitious, and I will detail. I will maybe a little later I will elaborate on my intentions, because what I want to do is for the first time do something that I haven't. I mean, besides like just I mean the microscopic review. For the first time, I kind of again this was in I mean in continuous to what we speak about like the 408, like the video of the 408 that they called titled 408 with regard to duality of that of the gates. So some people actually rightfully commented that so it's not really duality, it's like more quadrupality, like I mean like the sign, what they call the sign of the 4, because presumably like you need actually not minimum of 2 but a minimum of 4, like to have like I mean a complete construction, like of minimal complete construction, because I mean you would want to go I mean to a place, so you need like 2 gates in each location. So it's the minimum construction is actually 4 gates, not 2 gates, like two like in the like source location and 2 in the target location, which is true of course. Now I've never seen a Stargate in my life, and of course I have no access to it. This is of course a state secret, and I mean I'm not part of this kind of, don't want to be part of this, Nazi state. But we have, I mean, great reason to believe that the neurons that are grown in the lab, when they are large enough, they start to manifest the characteristics of the gates, of the portals. And this is mostly by how light is, like, I mean, how light is behaves, like I mean, around and inside the neurons. And this can be documented, and it was documented. I mean, but is there a way to actually prove it, like without a doubt, that what we actually see are portals? I mean, not stargates, but portals. I mean, in the more general sense. Can we actually prove it? Maybe what we've seen is already enough to prove it, perhaps. But can we supply a proof that is kind of like, I mean, extremely like explicit, I would say? Maybe not such one is needed. I mean, most physics, in biology and chemistry, is not like, I mean, proven by, I mean, the kind of like, I mean, aces like proofs that, I mean, that is like that everything is completely like, evident to everybody. So, I mean, maybe we don't need such a proof, but perhaps such a proof could be acquired, not just in order for us to be certain that these are actually portals, because for my part, I'm completely certain, because I have many circumstantial reasons to believe so, even before, like, we've seen the amazing, like, I mean, attributes of light. Like, I mean, because the way that they behave, and especially as I've said, because I understood very quickly that they can transfer energy from each other, not only mass. I mean, actually, my kind of like, I mean, focus in the research was mostly regarding energy transfer, and this was documented in the channel, not mass transfer. Like, only later, I mean, in retrospective, I mean, it might sound obvious that, I mean, if they can transfer energy, they can also transfer mass, which means that they are what we call portals. But actually, energy transfer was I mean, for several months, like, very important kind of like, I mean, theoretical, I mean, topic in this channel with regards to the Neros. And I've conducted also even like highly, you call fringe experiments with regards to energy transfer. This is important because, I mean, I just remind you that, I mean, energy transfer is as a characteristic of the Neros is not that it's only, I mean, like an amazing property that, like, can prove you all sort of things about the universe that you didn't know. It's also incredibly important from practical purposes. Like, I mean, like, I suggest, like, I mean, just, I mean, I remind you of one kind of like, like a practical application of energy transfer that I discussed in this channel. It's not, I mean, incredibly important, I mean, in itself, or the most important. It's just, I mean, just to give you kind of like, I mean, to give like the listener, especially if you are new to the channel or relatively new and you weren't aware of all the science issues, I mean, what's the deal with energy transfer? Why is it that, like, I mean, why was it just such a big deal? But it's just an example. It's just an example. It's not like, I mean, that the whole motivation. Just, I mean, kind of like to ground things in reality. Like, why do I even speak about energy transfer? So, like, one example would be the following. Neros, the robots work extremely more efficiently, like tremendously more efficiently, when they are energized with electricity. This was proven in this video, in this channel, very, very early, and was the basis of months of experiments. Now, they can be energized with several types of energy, but they are really good with electricity, since they are probably what we call in science jargon, or I mean hypothetical science jargon, room temperature superconductors. Now, this is actually this thing, I mean, is not this term is actually, it's not something that is defined very well, because it is not known to exist. It's like a hypothetical thing, and since it's hypothetical, there is not a like strict definition of what it actually means, because it's like a holy grail. It's like the holy grail. Like, I mean, there is no definition of what exactly is the Holy Grail. Like, what does it do? I mean, what is it? Because I mean, it's like a mythological object. It is not known to exist. So I mean, it's depicted differently. I mean, in different fantastical, like artistic representations. So in a similar vein, room temperature superconductors is something like the Holy Grail in physics. It's not known to exist. Hence, it's like there are known, like like scientists did not never define, like a complete and a complete set of characteristics of what it actually is. But in general, it means that it's a material that conduct electricity without converting some of the electrical energy to heat, and can do so in room temperature. What exactly is the room temperature is a question, because it's a different, the rooms are very different. If they are located in like Alaska, it's like in the middle of the winter, or in the Sahara Desert in the summer. Both places, presumably they have, you can see rooms in these places, but it's not the same rooms. So there is no kind of like a clear definition of what it means, but it should be said that superconductors are known to humans for more than 100 years, but only if they only show they only act as superconductors, these materials, in a temperature that is far below freezing point, far below, to such an extent that it's actually very expensive to maintain the environment that is required for this material to act as superconductors, even though still sometimes it's worth the efforts. Henceforth, superconductors have their place in industry. It's not something that is never used. It's actually used by humans, but it is thought that if humans will have room temperature superconductors, which means, and again, there is no clear meaning of what there is no clear definition, and this is I repeatedly say it because once you actually start to deal with these things, you actually understand why the problem. If you think that it doesn't exist and it's just like science fiction, then you don't really care about to define it well. That's why people don't care that they don't like have a clear definition of what it is. But when you actually see that, okay, these things, it's there in front of you, you actually when you actually deal with it, you do things with this, and that's what I've done. Then you see why the lack of definition is problematic, because just to complete the line of thought, it is thought by scientists and not only scientists but people that if superconductors would have been did not require the highly expensive environment of temperature that is far below freezing point, or in other words, if they would be act like the way that they are, they would show superconductivity just in room temperature, then they could have tremendously more applications, and some even say that it will be like a revolution in the industry, that maybe it will even change the face of the earth. It depends on who you ask, but opinions are varied because it's so hypothetical. Again, it's like the Holy Grail. It's like asking what will happen if you will discover the Holy Grail. You don't know, because people don't think about it too much, because it belongs to the realm of fantasy. So something like that is true to superconductors. But I've shown you many experiments with superconductors that not only show superconductivity behavior in room temperatures, they show it in temperatures that are far above room temperature, almost boiling point. But a lot is still to be studied on this issue, because while they show some behavior of superconductivity in not only the room temperature, whatever you think it means, level, but even like in boiling temperature levels, still it was demonstrated in his channel, I mean, several times in like a series of experiments that they do actually work better in freezing temperatures. Specifically in the temperatures of a freezer, like home freezer, which is, it should be said that it's still far above the normal temperatures that are used for superconductors, like, because it's something like minus 20 Celsius. I don't have any other, like, any other way, I'm under arrest, like, in home, like, throughout all these studies. So the lowest temperature that I could use was the freezer, and actually this could only be, used like when in the home freezer, so this is the minimal that I could use. Then yes, it was demonstrated right from the beginning that they show, they are much more efficient in these temperatures, like in minus 20 Celsius. And again, some would argue that even this is like a room temperature. It depends again. If you live in Siberia, maybe you would consider minus 20 Celsius as a perfectly valid room temperature. But yes, they demonstrated some behavior of superconductivity, even like, in boiling temperature, but they do work better as the temperature goes down. And as I've said before, maybe the question of whether they are or not superconductors that work in room temperature is in itself not that important as it might seem from the beginning, because this question is predicated on our wish to encounter like an alien material which has mythological properties. So we ask ourselves, is it really it? Is it it or not? Is it, we want to know, is this the magical thing that, presumably people, hypnotized but maybe it's not even that important, because what's important is not whether it is room temperature superconductor, whatever it means. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it means all sorts of stuff. What is really important from application perspective is, do they manifest the behavior of room temperature superconductors in a way that can be used for industry. So the question is, so what are these behaviors? So there are actually several behaviors. It's not only one. And some of the behaviors are only true to what we call type 2 superconductors, which is, for example, the alignment to a magnetic field, which is very interesting. And it's something that is, manifestly true. That this is something that, you can see in all of the videos, that they are all, this is 3D objects that are all the time are aligned to the plane of the magnetic field of the Earth. And there is no other explanation for this phenomenon besides that they are type 2 superconductors, at least not one that I know of. For example, just, as a contradicting example, think about like, red blood cells that generally have the shape that is very similar to that of a Nero. Like, red blood cell is shaped very similar to the Nero. And they also come like in, usually, they are, you can see many of them, in any blood sample, not like one. And you can see that, they are always floating in 3D environment, which means that you can see them in various like angles, like, because they float in the environment. Unlike Neros, that you can also, many times you will see like many, tremendous amount of them, especially if I put, like, in laboratory, like mixture, not like, if it comes straight from my body. And so this is like, and they are some, they vary, unlike red blood cells, they vary tremendously in size, but they also come in sizes that are almost, many of them are actually the size of red blood cells, and they have the general shape of red blood cells, but they are always aligned to the plane, always. And I have no other explanation besides that they are type 2 superconductors. But so this is very interesting, but it's not like the most incredibly important characteristic. Probably the most important characteristics is the fact that they can work as, they can utilize electrical energy to produce, valuable work. Like, they can transform electrical energy to other types of energy. for, I mean, specifically mechanical energy, without losing some of it to heat. And this is manifestly true, and we have many proofs of it, and we don't need them to do so perfectly in order to, I mean, to know that this is extremely valuable material. Because even if, say, we come to the conclusion that, let's say that they do so perfectly in minus 20 Celsius, but in 50 Celsius, they don't do that perfectly, but they lose only, like, I mean, a fraction of the amount to heat. So, are they room temperature superconductors? Opinions might vary on this question, but it doesn't really matter, because in any case, it means that they can be used. We need to think about the application. I mean, why on the first place people like I mean want think that it's so great? Like, what's so great about the mythological or hypothetical concept of room temperature superconductors? It's not like, I mean, that the perfect physical behavior is defined by, I mean, you know, it can be defined differently by different persons, is that important. But what's important is the application, which means that they can be used to convert electrical energy to mechanical energy, which means that they can produce work without losing almost nothing to heat. And it's, of course, it's not only, it's good not because on just efficiency reasons. I mean, just to remind you, I mean, regular, I mean, no combustion engine, like, I mean, that is like placed in any of almost all of your cars besides the electrical ones. I mean, like, I mean, something like 40 or 45% of the energy is lost, like, to heat. Like, I mean, you know, fuel, like, I mean, just to say, I mean, almost half of the fuel that is burned all around the world, like, I mean, is used, I mean, in practically is just heating the planet. Like, I mean, it's not even like doing anything. Like, I mean, just heating the planet. I mean, and but it's not only that for efficiency reasons, but even more importantly, heat generation is the main obstacle for microengineering, and I mean, by far the most the crucial, like, I mean, limiting factor in the production of processing units of, like, chips, like, I mean, CPUs and things like that. So the fact that microscopic electrical appliances, and it's certainly the neurons can produce, I mean, microchips. I mean, they can produce some life forms that, so if they can produce life forms, they can certainly produce microchips. I mean, like, they can work in far, like, higher resolution than what's needed for microchips. They can work in the subatomic level. Like, I mean, they can move atoms, like specific atoms, and they produce, and like, I mean, and create new microbes and new life forms that, I mean, so it's not a question whether they have, like, the required resolution, like, to work in the microchip level. Of course, they've done so with, I mean, seems much more impressive, like, as far as resolution goes. So working in this resolution without producing heat is something that, I mean, can potentially revolutionize everything that is related to microengineering, including, and I mean, the creation of processing units. Arguably, it has already done so, because, I mean, the Full Metal Jacket, like, I mean, you know, the fly that you've seen that was generated by the Neros, I mean, it's got a brain, right? I mean, it's like, I mean, it's doing things in the world, so arguably, and it's made of metal, so arguably you could say that they produce microchips in this room. Like, I mean, maybe not the microchips that you intuitively think about, but, I mean, indeed microchips. I mean, they produce, like, processing units, I mean, information processing units made out of metal that are used, I mean, by, living creature, but it is also a mechanical creature, but it's all living creatures. I mean, you and me, we are also living, I mean, mechanical creatures, I mean, by definition. So this was, arguably, it was already been done. I mean, they showed to do it. And all of this is true whether even if they are not, like, perfect room temperature superconductors, even if they do not fall strictly under the definition of room temperature superconductors, the definition that does not really exist. Now, let's get back to, the issue of light. So, what I was thinking is maybe we can actually pry deeper into the yes, sorry. So I would say I spoke about like why energy transfer can be important. So it was demonstrated that they work tremendously more efficient when they are energized with electricity, specifically with by the process of electrolysis, which is not trivial and problematic. But I discussed why I use it specifically that in the past in many videos. I don't want to repeat myself. But they can also, use. It was evident they can also use magnetism. Like that magnetism can also be used. For them to be energized. Maybe as an implication of the Lorentz law, but probably not. I would say that not in a trivial way. What I've seen, from what I've seen, they're kind of like, the way that they work inside magnetic fields, I would argue that it's not certainly not an obvious implication of the Lorentz law, but there is still much to be studied on this regard, and there are all sorts of practical limitations that prohibited me from venturing too deeply into this realm. But even though it's not only very interesting, but extremely important. Extremely what to say? Can have a tremendous implications on engineering. And also how they behave. When they are energized with AC, because electrolysis is DC, but if you can use AC to energize them, this can also be of tremendous implication. But there were all sort of practical limitations, because I cannot do anything. I'm locked in a room and I don't have any money. So, and there are also safety concerns, because I'm not totally reckless. I'm not going to danger myself or the environment, with very reckless things. So from security purposes I was limited on how many things I can do with regards to magnetism and AC, even though it's incredibly interesting. And I started to do all sorts of stuff, but just stopped because I felt that I don't work safely, and it's, it's not, it doesn't worth it. Whatever it is, that doesn't worth my life or other people's. So anyway, it was demonstrated that they work much better when they are energized with electricity. Now, what does it mean that they work? They can do all sorts of stuff, but one thing that they can do very, very well is actually something that they don't do by default when they are outside my body. They can do it if you tell them to do it, because they can. Again, they are sentient creatures. We communicate with a language. You should always remember that these are not microbes. These are sentient creatures. They have a language. This is a civilization. So if you want them to kill life forms, you can tell them that. Do it. And they will do it outside the body. But by default, they don't do it. By default, the way that they interact with life forms outside the body, in various containers, it's incredibly complicated, and it was a huge subject in this channel. And of course, we only scratched the surface. Because their default, because they are not like robots that, while, as I said, they are not like robots that just sit and wait for commands. I can direct them with the symbolic language, but it's not that if I do not direct them, they don't do anything, just sit and wait. No, they have their own agenda, what they do. They have their own mind and targets and goal, and they have default behaviors, and so you don't need to direct them in order for them to do stuff. They do it they live their life. So the default behavior of how to interact with life forms is outside the body is very complicated, and it cannot be summarized in any one sentence, because it's extremely complicated. But when they are inside the body, it's they work with the interest of the body. They don't want the body to die. So they mostly what they do is they kill the life form, and sometimes they zombify the life forms, which means that it's something close to killing them, but not exactly. Like the zombification process is something very unique, but let's discuss it some other time. I mean, in essence, it's like killing the life forms. It's like it's not exactly like killing. It's like it's like taking control of the life forms. In effect, it makes the microbe like totally useless. That it cannot do anything. So it's like killing it. Arguably, but it's still alive. It's also depends. There's the issue of philosophical issues of what does it even mean to be alive. When is the microbe alive or not? Arguably, they're not. It's still alive, but it's not. It cannot hurt you. From practical purposes, it's dead. So I call it to zombify the microbes. So can they do it not only in my body but in other bodies as well? Of course they can. That is one of the reasons why people like the drug, because it's an excellent antibiotic. It's a perfect antibiotic. But there is a problem, because if people eat the drug too much, they become what I call hybrids, and this is extremely common in Israel. This is a cultural phenomenon in Israel for more than 100 years. The hybrids, according to my definition of a hybrid, it's not like the biological definition, of course, but it's it's like a known issue in Israel. And they are you shouldn't do it. It has a tremendous amount of problems that are involved, and first of all, it's an addiction. It's an addiction to a substance that is taken by cannibalizing on poor people from another place, and taking their bodies and eating their food, and all these crimes that that. Just let me pause for a second and say, with regards to the war, people, maybe you think, why am I such an escapist to speak about, science and whatever, while there is a war in Israel? So I would say, I don't give a fuck about the war in Israel. The only thing that I care about with regards to this war is how to, there is now presumably an aircraft carrier, an Nimitz-class aircraft carrier that is either on the way to the shores of Israel or already there. So, of course, that is there in order to support the Nazi Israeli regime with their subjugation of the Palestinians. The only thing that, I care with regards to this war is how to completely and utterly destroy not only this carrier, but all other 10. To stop these monsters, from ravaging the seas of the earth. And I'm sure this will happen very soon. We will take care of that. These Nazis in the United States their arms will not be able to grasp everything that they can, the way that they do it for so long. I don't care about the war in Israel. I care about the United States and how to stop these Nazis. My frame is not this little trash can, this little junkyard that is called Israel, and it's actually just a miniature piece of land that is full of shitty people. My concern with regard to international relationship is how to destroy the United States of America, because this is the real problem. This is the real problem. Not Israel. The USA is the problem. Israel is just a leopard dog. That is what it is. The villain is the United States, and they are the ones that should be stopped. But where were we? So regarding energy transfer. So people should not eat the drug at all, and this is a major problem and a major cause of but not the only one, of the subjugations of the Venusians. But still, it doesn't mean that in the future these robots could not be used for therapeutic purposes for, I don't know if humans, because I don't like. I don't think that. I hate humans, but maybe dogs. Maybe we would want in Titanland, maybe we would have dogs that Earth dogs that used as pets, and maybe we would like to cure them of all sorts of diseases, infections. So maybe the tea can be used to cure the infection place that is infected by injecting a little bit of like I mean, laboratory produced like robots to the dog, but you don't necessarily want to inject the dog with a large amount of the robots, because presumably you wouldn't want it to stay too much in their body, because if you use too much of it, it stays in the body, and then I mean the creature becomes an hybrid, and it's got like a long list of problems that are associated with it, as is evident in the case of like the Israeli society. So at the best, like I mean hypothetical course of action would be to inject the dog with a very small amount of the robots, just in the place it is needed, and then to energize the robots, so they will work very effectively by eliminating the infection, and then stop the energizing, and presumably if it's like a very low quantity, it will relatively quickly be out of the system, because they are part of the if it's just a small quantity, it's like it become like it's got like a half-life. It's not really half-life in the chemical sense, but more like in the biological sense. But it's got something kind of like a half-life in the human body, in the dog body. So it will eventually, pretty quickly, presumably be out of its body. So it will not leave any kind of associated health risk. But how can you energize it? So the best way that I know to energize, you cannot burn it. You cannot burn the dog. So, the best way that I can think of is, again, electrolysis, because I've done so with a lot of success. But again, would you want to actually electrify the dog? Now, perhaps, in some cases, the answer would actually be yes, but because you can electrocute, living organism to some extent without endangering their life. And maybe if it's like the last resource and you cannot use regular antibiotics, you would actually say yes, I rather electrify the dog for this purpose than if it's very efficient medical procedure that will be gathered by it. But what happened? But maybe if we can actually take into account the energy transfer hypothesis, and it's still hypothesis because it wasn't completely proven. Arguably it was proven, but it's for more details, just watch the videos. Because there are several videos with it was like a topic in this blog for quite some time, and again it predates my understanding that the neurons are actually like solar gates or portals that mass can transferred from, even though again in the retrospective, you can argue if energy can be transferred, why not mass? Because there is some kind of equivalence between energy and mass. But all of this is in retrospective. The initial thought was regarding energy. So I thought, okay, maybe you can actually inject the dog with a small amount of neurons, and also put a container with a metal container with big amount of the neurons, or any amount adjacent to the place of the wound of the dog, but not in the body, but just as a compress, as a bandage, on the dog, and then electrolysis. Use the electrolysis or any kind of electric energizing method that can be engineered on the bandage that is not inside the body of the dog. Now, presumably, if they can transfer energy from each other, maybe the ones that is outside the dog, but on the skin, or close to the skin, will transfer energy to the ones that are inside, and maybe this will cause the ones that are inside to very, very effectively kill all the infections, but the dog will not be electrocuted. And then, when they are done, you just, remove the compress, remove the bandage, and again, they are, the ones that are inside the dog will, presumably will be, removed from its body relatively quickly, and there will not be associated health risks. And of course, this will be both, it will be, the dog will benefit from this greatly effective antibiotics, but without the need to be electrocuted. So this is what just an example to ground because when I speak about energy transferring in just in the abstract sense, I might the audience might not understand what am I speaking about. It sounds something almost spiritual. What does it mean, energy transfer? What do I it's got like all sort of a spiritual connotation, but I mean the idea is completely non-spiritual. Like I mean it's grounded on like very specific. I mean like a huge amount, but specific. Like I mean applications in the real world. It's not like something out of transcendental. It's something that it's like very. I mean, if you can prove it and you can actually show how it happens, this can have tremendous amount of application. Of course, the whole cure the dog of infection is just one example. I can think of like a million other examples. It's just just to ground like the issue in reality, so it will not sound like something from that belongs to the world of religion or spirituality. Now, how can we actually prove energy transfer in a very explicit way? Perhaps we cannot, but if we can, it will be amazing. So what can be a way to actually prove it in kind of like totally explicit way, like that will be to shut all mouths, as they say. So one type of energy that can be used for such a proof is light, because light is also energy. So if you can demonstrate that when you do something on one neuron, the light in another neuron immediately acts differently, this will be a proof of energy transfer, and will also be a definite proof, if someone needs one, that these are actually portals. Like I for myself, I'm certain that these are portals, but I mean this kind of proof will be a supplemental proof that these are actually portals, but it will also be a proof of energy transfer, because light is also energy. So if we stop, we do something in one, and we see that light behave differently in another, this will be a proof of energy transfer. And again, for that purpose, we don't need like, of course, any person that ever passed through the solar gates to Venus was actually able to give us this this proof. Again, it's not that people in Israel know it for like 100 years and it's used every day. But this is all part of the secret. It's not like open. I have no access to it, and I don't want to have any access to it. I don't want to be part of this Nazi regime. I think like a scientist that work. From my perspective, like everything they do is open to the public, even though I know that it's not, because my internet connection is always monitored and blocked. But this is your business, like the people of the intelligence services of the world. It's not my business. Like from my perspective, it's all open to the public and peer reviewed. Whoever these hypothetical peers might be. So, like, what I want to prove is something that anyone that passes through the gates, already knows for a fact, but they cannot speak about it. So I want to prove it like in an open way. So, and for that we don't really need like two gates like in two different planets. It's the neurons that we have this like in the billions of neurons that we have in the various containers in this room are enough. But the problem is that this is the main problem, and I will stop here because it's like more than an hour. But just I leave it in an open question, like how can we catch two neurons that are that are interlinked? Because we want like two neurons on the same microscopic slide that one leads to the other, because presumably they can lead to anywhere. I don't know, like they can lead to any of the other billions neurons inside the same container, and maybe even though it sounds less probable to me, but presumably they can lead to any other neuron in the universe. But I would argue that I don't. First, it's non-constructive behavior, like the neuron is born with like interlinked to like a random neuron in the universe, like maybe in another galaxy. Theoretically, it might be true, but first, it will be impossible to prove it. And second, I don't see how it is constructive. A more constructive behavior and something that will be much more, in line with the goals of our research would be to assume that when they are born, they are interlinked with a neuron that is very close to them. Now you can argue the fact that it is something that will be helpful to your research, why it doesn't like oblige the neurons. Like, I mean, what you actually say is that you want reality to be in line with your research purposes. So, yeah, yes, it might be true and it might not be true. I mean, but I mean, maybe it is true. And again, it's more logical. I mean, yes, it's working to my benefit. And that's what I like the theory. But I mean, you would admit that this is more logical. It's actually like that. I mean, it makes more sense that they are born. I mean, like when they are interlinked with someone that is very close to them, than when a random one, like in the universe. Even though both options are theoretically possible. Like theoretically, they might born, like, I mean, with interlinked to another one in like another galaxy. Maybe, I mean, but I mean, it's got some sense to assume that they are interlinked with someone that is very close geographically to where they were born. Maybe to like a person of like, I mean, what we call their family, like, I mean, because they are born like from other ones. They are born from other ones, so I mean, they might be like logical as a starting point to assume that they are interlinked with like their parents, I would say, like, I mean, or their brothers or something like that. And if it's true, we might be able to actually catch like two that are, I mean, interlinked, and then we would be able to, I mean, under the microscope, I mean, demonstrate that when we stop, like, I mean, light from one, immediately the other, also, show different, kind of like behavior with regards to light. And this will be first, I mean, a proof of that they are actually portals, even though I'm certain about it. But it will also be, a valid demonstration of the property of energy transfer, because light is energy. So if such experiment will be a success, it means that when we stop light to pass from one, it stops like passing through another, which means that light passes through them both, which means that energy passes through them. So this is the idea, but of course there still is a huge open question of how can we actually found like a pair like this. It's not an easy thing, because generally what I do is I take microscopic sample, which means like a drop from an ocean. So this is probably as a start, as a starting point to answer this question. What would be needed is to multiply the neurons in a very, 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 very small container, something that I haven't done yet. Like to use like a almost microscopic container and to multiply neurons inside of it. Then if I take a sample from it, assuming that they are interlinked with those that are created with their brothers and not with like random neurons from another galaxy, then we will have like many brothers and sisters inside a very small amount of liquid. And if I'll take a sample of it, presumably it will, the probability of catching interlinked ones will be much, much higher than if I take it from like metal containers of 5 liters, and you take one drop, the chances to get like 2 interlinked ones is close to 0. So like first step in such an experiment will be to actually like work with miniature container or something that I haven't done until now, and this can like be a good starting point for this new venture, I would say. So that's it for now.